and welcome back to A Plus Life, where a 20-year-old redhead with the net worth of 2 corn chips tells you how to live your life. I feel like I look like I'm in the 1940s today. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. I want to have one of those transatlantic accents where I sound like Judy Garland or something from Singing in the Rain. Anywho, it is April, and that means that it is time for a new theme. And this month we're getting abstract. We're talking about a concept that is endless and scarce, limited and abundant, healing and harrowing. We are talking about time. So this concept is a little bit abstract, but because I have about a quarter of a college degree, I think I'm qualified to talk about abstract things. But you can read more in depth about the concept of time in last week's blog post, which I will post in the description box below. This month we're going to talk a lot about anxiety, and that is intentional because I personally have really struggled with anxiety in the last few weeks. And I want to be as upfront and honest as possible on this blog, so I am going to talk about it and hopefully help myself while I'm helping you. And as I've been dealing with anxiety, I have realized that time plays a central role in how I adapt to my symptoms. Because the more time I have to wait for an answer when I'm lost, the more anxious I become. And I think that at its root, anxiety is about impatience. Now, that's not to say that anxious people can't be patient people. I mean, in everyday life, when we're waiting in line or helping somebody learn a new skill, we can be totally normal. But when it comes to big life questions, especially in relationships, professional lives, and life decisions, anxious people are grade A overanalyzers. And when we have to wait for something like an acceptance letter or a reply to a ballsy text or a job offer, time drags slower than ever. And when we have so much time, we fill it up by worrying about whatever it is we're waiting for. We tend to jump to the worst conclusion possible for our problems, and we have trouble trusting that what people say to us is what they actually mean. So if I'm waiting to find out if I got an internship and I'm really anxious about it, somebody might tell me that, oh, maybe they just didn't read the applications yet. But my anxiety is going to tell me that they looked at my application, had a great laugh at how ridiculously underqualified I am, and threw it into the fireplace. And once we jump to these conclusions, anxious people start ruminating their thoughts. Ruminating means that we basically repeat our thoughts until they get bigger and bigger and have a snowball effect. So if I believe that one internship isn't going to work out, I might start assuming that I'll never find one. And then ruminating might make me feel like I'll never get experience to put on a resume, and I won't get a job after graduation, and nobody will ever be attracted to me because I won't have any money, and I'll end up cold and broke and alone, subjecting myself to the dangers of these Milwaukee streets. And yes, it sounds crazy. We know it sounds crazy. Which in turn makes us feel worse. And then more time passes, and we keep going through this cycle until one of two things happens. If we get the answer that we want, we're really happy, but we also feel a little bit stupid because we wasted so much time worrying. And if we don't get the answer we want, we start an entirely new cycle of anxiety. So through that whole explanation, you can see that impatience for time to pass can affect somebody's every thought and move. And I have had these cycles hundreds of times in my life, whether it was about making a team or making a bus. And every time I go through it, I hear the exact same pieces of advice. Be patient, have trust, be still. Now, all of those are beautiful, wonderful pieces of advice, but to an anxious person, they are the most fucking annoying things you could possibly say. When we're ruminating and it feels like our lives are splitting at the seams, the last thing we want to hear is, relax, it'll be fine. But even though we hate that advice, we need to hear it. I have learned that patience is truly the only way to be happy when life is uncertain. Instead of focusing on what we don't know and overthinking the future, we have to focus on the moment that we're in. Gotta take our worries and say, Hakuna Matata. It ain't no thing but a chicken wing. It really is that simple, and that's why it's so hard for anxious people to understand, because we're so great at overthinking. And I really want teens who struggle with anxiety to know that there are plenty of ways to mitigate our problems and enjoy our time, but we have to learn to utilize them. So my A+ tips this week are all about how we can help teens recenter themselves in times of uncertainty. The first tip is for teens, and it is to breathe. Teens are pressured to meet so many benchmarks that it's overwhelming, and it can really screw up our perception of time when we're constantly preparing for the future. So I want teens to know that it's okay to take a day, a minute, a week just to recenter ourselves. It's way better to pause and refocus than to push too hard and become anxious. So use extra time to your advantage. Take a walk, take a nap, take a bath. Do something to slow down your thoughts and to make sense of what's actually happening versus what your anxiety is telling you. The The next tip is also for teens or anybody battling anxiety, and it's to be intentional about stopping the bad thoughts. Sometimes we get addicted to worrying and become a slave to our imagination. But the more we just sit and think about something, the worse we're gonna feel. So the minute we feel these thoughts coming on, we have to distract ourselves. And this is different than recentering, because instead of slowing down, we have to take ourselves outside of our heads completely. So go to a movie or play a sport with your friends or get into a YouTube hole. Find something to focus on so you can't focus on your worries. And finally, this last tip is for teachers, and it's to have patience while cultivating patience. What I mean is that it's hard to get anxious teenagers to relax. Anxious people will find any opportunity to worry, so we have to teach them to have patience while also being patient ourselves. Anxiety is a complicated, annoying, harrowing condition, but it is not unstoppable. When we approach it with ease and understanding, we can find a way to enjoy time again. So that's all we have time for this week, but join us again next week where we'll continue with our new theme by talking about time management skills. It's gonna be a good time! Do you see what I did there? 'Cause time. Thank you so much for watching, and have an A+ day.